Associate Director of Admissions for Claremont Graduate University. And today's topic is what are my chances, tips for getting accepted with a low GPA or GMAT score. And this is brought to you by beatthegmat.com. Some of the topics I'm going to discuss today are can I still get in? And it's going to focus on anxiety over taking the GMAT or having a low GPA. I'm going to talk about a little concept called imposter syndrome, and then give a couple suggestions and tips to you guys, and discuss the general admission requirements. The second topic is the holistic review process, and in that I'm going to talk about what it is to actually, what is exactly a holistic review process and what does that mean. And then I'm going to discuss how work experience can overcome a low GMAT or a low GPA, as well as what's a conditional and contingent admissions and how to look for schools that have those as admission concepts. The last part is prep programs. So examples of prep programs to help you get prepared for not only the MBA, but to overcome any GMAT fears that you might have. So the first topic, can I still get in? And GMAT exam anxiety. I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret that before I actually have my MBA and before I got my MBA, I also had exam anxiety, something that I dealt with all my life. So SATs before going to college, and the GMAT before going to graduate school. And I'm not alone. Many students are apprehensive about taking tests for graduate school. And there's different ways that you can overcome this anxiety that you might have. And the best way is to learn how to be a better test taker, and also to learn the tricks and the trades that come with the GMAT exam itself. And you can learn these tricks by participating in various test prep courses. Another thing that you should do is, if you've taken a practice exam online, which I all recommend that you do, is to see where your score is and be realistic. You know, after so much preparation, you're only gonna move up so much, but you want to research universities where you're a fit, not only where the curriculum is a fit, but where your scores are a fit. So if you know you're not, getting into the 700 range, you might have to scale back some of the programs that you're applying to. Or you might have to increase your preparation. Maybe you have to put more hours and more preparation into studying for the GMAT. The third thing is, most schools take the highest score that you've received. So it's okay to take the exam multiple times. At our school, at the Drucker school, we don't look down on it if a student has taken the exam multiple times. I actually look at it as a form of dedication. The person has the desire to go to our program and to go to graduate school, and so they're doing what it takes to get in, and sometimes that means they have to take the exam more than once. The second part of this is the low GPA. Some of you out there already feel that your GPA is too low, and what I always suggest that you do is that you contact people like me, admission directors, maybe the school recruiters, people that work in the admissions office, and bring up any concerns that you have towards your GPA. Because the GPA is something that you can't fix, unlike a GMAT, you can go back and retake the test. You can't go back to undergrad and take courses over again. So there's not a whole lot you can do to elevate your existing GPA score. However, a lot of schools have an addendum to your application, which is an optional component where you can explain anything that you might perceive as a flaw in your application, whether that is a standardized test score or your GPA. This is where a lot of students might take the time to explain that something was going on in their life, or they had a challenging major, or they had a major that they didn't even like, but they were already so deep into the program they just kept going. But these things affected their academic progress. And so schools do take these things into account. So you want to tell your story. You want to be able to spell it out for us on why your GPA is the way it is. You don't want to leave it in the admissions committee's hand where we have to guess why your score is the way it is. So tell us. Be an open book about it, and don't hide behind it. Um, Also, something that can help in terms of GPA is a lot of students have a rocky freshman year, and we understand that. But we look at academic progress throughout your time in college, and so if we see positive progression, that's always a good story to tell. So another issue, and this also deals with a little bit of anxiety, is just the mere fact, are you ready for graduate school? Do you feel that you're good enough to get into graduate school or to succeed in graduate school? Um, if you're asking these questions and you feel anxious about pursuing graduate school, but you still have a lot of self-doubt, knock it off. And we call that imposter syndrome. So you want to fight that. And so imposter syndrome is a condition or a set of conditions where an individual doesn't feel good enough and does not acknowledge their previous accomplishments in a realistic way. Um, this happens everywhere. I can't tell you enough how many people I meet with who are already have self-doubt that say, "Hey, I can't do the GMAT. I don't do good on exams. I won't do good." And when they say I won't do good and I can't do good, they've already defeated themselves. And I'm surprised that I laugh, but it's serious, but I'm surprised they tell an admissions director that, because we don't want to hear people that say they can't do something or they've already given up. We want people who are go-getters that feel that they can take on a challenge and succeed and that are going to put in the work. And really, imposter syndrome is something that really, really is a negative. But there's ways to fight imposter syndrome. And the first one is try to briefly write out your exact feelings. What is scaring you? What is making you anxious? And this is serious. So I say write at least 5 things down on a sheet of paper and write down what is scaring you from reaching your goals. And then write down solutions to those. So one of them, if it's the GMAT, the solution might be, well, I'm going to sign up for a prep course. Or if I don't have time to study for the GMAT because I work, well, during your lunch, each day during lunch, maybe that's an hour that you could spend studying during the exam. So, if you work every day, Monday to Friday, those are, 5 hours a week that you can spend on studying for the GMAT exam. Maybe you are rushing things, so you haven't allotted yourself enough time to prepare for graduate school. So you need to sit back and take that time. So really, I say write down what your feelings are, what's holding you back, and then write down some solutions that you have for those things. And that ties into the second part, which is make a list of all the positive things that you've done. Start being a little more positive. So, talk about your positive accomplishments. And those things will come out as you prepare for graduate school. Talk about your positives. If math is a weakness, maybe a positive is English. So you'll do well on the verbal section, which is actually weighted heavier on the GMAT exam than the math. So there's positives that can be found. The third one is do not procrastinate or delay. And this happens a lot. People have already defeated themselves and said, hey, I'm not good at exams. Standardized testing is a weakness for me. But they don't start preparation early enough. And next thing you know, we're already accepting applications and you don't have the time it takes to prepare. So don't procrastinate. And the last thing is pay it forward. If you see someone or if you're preparing for a graduate school with someone else and they get into the imposter syndrome mode, give good advice. Tell them some of the things that you've done and give a pep talk. And if you get into graduate school and you meet someone who or a colleague who is preparing and they're going through the difficulties of the GMAT or they're worried about their GPA, pay it forward. Give good advice. Okay, so here's some suggestions and tips. So apply to schools that evaluate your application in its entirety. Most schools will. There's not one thing that will necessarily eliminate you from being reviewed, but it's important to recognize, like I said earlier, that your GMAT, your GPA is in the ballpark for the admissions at a particular school that you're applying to. Be prepared to discuss your undergraduate grades. A lot of the times, if you make it to the interview round, this will come up in the interview. However, not everybody makes it to the interview round, and so you want to be upfront about your grades. So that's where that addendum comes in, so that you can be upfront about it, and then you could touch on it again if you advance onto the next round. GPA is an issue, and like I said, you can't go back to undergraduate school, and you can't redo what you did as an undergrad. So take a few graduate level courses. Show that you're more than capable of doing the work. This is definitely a positive. Now, I can't accept the graduate level courses in lieu of your undergraduate GPA, but it tells me a lot about you as an individual, and that plays into the holistic review. The fourth one is don't be afraid or don't be let down that you have to retake the GMAT. It's okay. A lot of people have to retake the GMAT exam. Now, it's expensive, but if you're really sure that you want to get your MBA, it's something that you have to do, and the investment will pay off. The fifth one is rare, but you can always apply again. Maybe something in your application, maybe you want to go back and take some graduate level courses to bump up your application a little more. Maybe you applied late and didn't have the time to retake the GMAT. It's okay to apply again. You will not be looked down on. So the holistic review process, you hear this a lot. I put on the left side just a little flow chart, but that's not the same for every school, and neither are the admission requirements. But what I want people to understand is that at the Drucker School, these are all the requirements that we have for admission. And when we do the holistic review process, that initial review, we look at all of these things. The personal statement, the resume, transcripts, letters of recommendation, all play an equal part in the admissions process. So what is a holistic review? It's an individual review of an applicant with consideration of all academic and non-academic factors. And when I say non-academic factors, that's where work experience will come in. And so considerations made for students. So when we look at an application, we're trying to find the potential for success. Can the student be successful in the program? And also we look at can we help the student find work after the program? Or if they're already employed, at completion of the program, will the student be able to actually continue to move up within the organization where they currently work or in another organization? And so in order to judge potential for success, we want to look beyond just the GPA and the GMAT. And so the second part is ability to contribute to the educational environment. So the GMAT is supposed to help us determine that, so is the GPA. But some of your life experiences also let us know whether or not you can contribute to the educational environment. Any leadership roles that you had. So the holistic review is important in determining these two factors. The decision-making process may include but should not be solely based on minimum grade point average or test scores. No one factor should determine whether or not a student is admitted or denied. And so when going back to the work experience, if you have work experience and you can show that you've moved up within your organization and you've been promoted, that might speak more to your success than how you did in your undergraduate program several years back. So someone is recognizing your hard work and your success within an organization. And so that's very key. So the holistic review process helps us analyze those things a little bit better and give us what type of student you're going to be and whether or not you're going to be a well-rounded student, and also what type of alum are you going to be. Are you going to be active? And again, are you willing to pay for it? So going back into work experience and a little bit more in depth, we're going to ask the questions: have you had any internships? Are there any volunteer work? Or have you had any paid positions? Professional experience can definitely work in your favor in a holistic review. Your experience will provide insight as to what you can contribute to the academic environment, and demonstration of your professional growth and achievements can be a positive indicator of how well you'll do in a program. Now, I know some of you in the chat might not have work experience, and so you might say, oh, great, not only do I not have work experience, my GPA is low, or my GMAT is not as high. And the truth of the matter is, if one area is low and you don't have the work experience, that means you have to put that much more effort into your grades in undergrad, or that much more effort into the GMAT, because the GMAT exam is going to become that much more important. However, to combat that lack of experience, we look for leadership roles that you've had while you were in your undergraduate university. We look at volunteer work that you've done. We want to know what motivates you. What's your reasons for going to graduate school? Because you might not have the GPA, but you might not have the GMAT score. But you're a leader. You've done certain things. Maybe you're an entrepreneur and you have an entrepreneurial spirit. So you have to display these things in order to combat something being low within your application. Okay, so some schools have different options, and you might be aware of the conditional admissions or the contingent admission. So a conditional admission, a college may admit students who have not met all the admission requirements. So to remain enrolled in the school, the students must fulfill specified requirements before or during their enrollment. And so a lot of times we'll use this if a student, we really like the student, but maybe we have some reservations in their quantitative skills and that their GPA, when we look at it, they have a good GPA, but they didn't take any math courses within their undergraduate program. They didn't take an economics course or statistics course. And so what we'll do is we may tie in a conditional admission, and they are faced with a requirement that they have to meet certain grades within their first semester, or in the math courses, the quantitative courses in their first year, to remain in the program. It's rare, but it's sometimes for really strong candidates, it's something that we may consider, and other schools may consider as well. Contingent admission. This type of admission is dependent on a condition or occurrences not yet established. So we might do a contingent admission, and again, this is another rare thing that a school might consider, is say that you have, you were a straight A student in undergrad, but when it came to the GMAT, you tanked the GMAT. But you did well in the interview and everything else looks strong. We might do a contingent admission and require you to redo the GMAT before you can start in the program. This is a very rare occurrence, But again, some schools might have it. It exists with us. Um, but it's not, it doesn't hurt to ask the schools that you're applying to. So we have what's certain schools might have a program that starts before um, the actual program itself, the MBA program itself. And we have one of those programs. We call it a summer bridge program. And so you might want to spend time, if you know your scores are very low and you struggle with standardized tests and you feel that you've done all the work that you can do, you might look for programs that have something similar to our summer bridge program, which is a program that students start in the summer and they take actual MBA courses as they prepare, take a preparatory course for retaking the GMAT. And so what this does is we put them into a graduate level environment, and we see how these students do in the course, in a graduate level course, but we also put them in an environment where they'll be with other students who didn't do well on the GMAT exam, and they can study together, prepare together, and we provide them tutoring, and then they retake the GMAT exam. And what we find is the success rate is around 85–90% every year, because one, we don't just look at the standardized test, but we also look at how you do in the classroom. And it's in the classroom, it will be a quantitative course. So this lets us see whether or not you'll be able to do some of the quant work that's required within the MBA program. The other part is, when you study for the GMAT, you're not alone. You're with other people that have also struggled. And so what happens is students end up studying together, and they have this common interest and this common goal. And you'll be surprised. There's the imposter syndrome that once existed individually doesn't exist within this group, because everybody is positive and promoting each other to do well. And so, like I said, we see like an 85–90% success rate in admitting students that go through our bridge program. And I know other schools have similar programs, maybe not exactly the same, but do your homework and see what's out there for you. And so I want to leave you with a few takeaways before I go into some questions that you guys might have. And number one, preparation is the key to success. And they, practice makes perfect. And that saying is true. But it's also the mental aspect and getting over that defeatist mentality that you may be suffering from. Number two, knowing is half the battle. Research, research, research. And this goes along with preparation. Know what schools you can get into based on your undergraduate performance, based on your work experience, based on some of the things that you've done, but also on your standardized test scores. And so, aim high. I never tell people not to aim high, but you also have to be realistic. And so that's where knowing is half the battle. And the third one, it should say no time like the present, but there is no time like the present. Start now. If you know you want to apply for graduate school in the spring or next fall, 2014, I believe, there's no time like the present. Start doing the first two things, preparing for the exam, researching what schools you want to apply to, where you're fit, and where you match up based on their class profile and their averages and GMAT and GPA ranges. And like I said, there's no time like the present. Begin now. Talk to other people that have gone through a particular program. Ask if you could speak to current students. And when you do, our alums, and when you do, don't just ask about how the program is and how they like it. Ask them about their preparation before getting into graduate school, and see, what you have to do. If someone says, to get into this program, you have to have a 750 GMAT, and I, studied 4 hours a day. Ask yourself, do you have it within yourself to do that? And so that's always a start. Really, have these heart-to-heart conversations. And so I want to thank you guys for listening to the presentation, and we'll go into the question and answer part, but I wanted to leave you with my contact information. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to contact me or give me a call. Thank you. So the first question, does the admissions committee look at the entire application, or are there some preset cutoffs only after clearing okay? So this is a good question. I was going to read the whole thing, but there's some shorthand involved in the typing. We actually do look at the entire application, but yes, there are cutoffs. And that's why I was saying, it's important to do your research, to see what the class profiles look like. Schools typically, or sometimes they will not tell you what those cutoffs are. But if you do your homework and you see that the average is GMAT is a 600 and the range is of GMAT scores is a 570 and above, if you're coming in with a 400 GMAT, you understand that you got to go back and retake the exam most likely. But that being said, if there's some things that stick out in your application, if you're a solid student, you have a lot of years of work experience, or you have leadership roles within your undergraduate university, sometimes those cutoffs, people will be willing to reconsider low things within your application. Someone said, what are some of the key things that you should include in the letter explaining your test scores? It could be many things. If you've always struggled with standardized tests, that's good for us to know. If there's any learning disabilities, that's a perfect time to also let us know. Also, another thing to let us know is whether or not you plan on taking the exam again. A lot of times, you'll already have submitted everything, and you can automatically send your scores to that university, and then your file goes immediately to the admissions committee, and we don't know that you're planning to retake the exam. So not only should you say that in your addendum, but you should get on the phone and let us know right away. So one, can it be harmful to use the addendum? How can you make sure you're coming across positively and appropriately without complaining? The addendum, I would say, is only harmful if you make excuses. I do see that quite often. People put imposter syndrome within their addendum, and that always surprises me. But there are ways to come off positive. Like I said, if you write your addendum and say, hey, I'm taking the GMAT for the first time in November, and if I don't do well, your school is my first choice, and I'll do what I have to take, even if that requires me retaking the GMAT exam, I will do that. And some people will say, I'm the first person in my family to go to college, and this is something I really want, and I'll do what I have to do to get in. And if that means I have to take graduate level courses, or I have to retake the GMAT exam, that's what I'll do. Another positive is, someone will say, hey, look, I was a chemistry major in undergrad, and I realized that into my sophomore year, that is not what I want to do. I want to be in business, and that's why I'm going to get my MBA. And while I was a chemistry major, I struggled because I didn't love it. It's not what I wanted to do. And if you can address those things, it doesn't come off as an excuse. It gives us a better idea of who you are as a person, and it explains what might have happened. So, as a percentage, how much does the GPA count in an application? I think when you look at the holistic approach, it 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 counts, but I can't tell you the percentage, and every school is different. But there's ways to combat that, and I would say that experience counts more for us than your undergraduate GPA. Contingent admission agreements. That's a great question because some people just write me a blunt email saying, I want conditional admission based on this, or I want contingent admission. That's not a good email to send. The best way to approach that is to do the best that you can on everything and contact the admissions department and say, hey, my GPA or my GMAT might not be where it is. Do you guys offer a conditional admission or a contingent admission based on this criteria? And tell them why you think that you should get a chance to be reviewed for that. It may or may not work, but don't go around sending a mass email up to school saying, can I get conditional or contingent admission? That doesn't work. The next question. So, to what level does work experience offset a low GPA? How much does work experience count in the admission process? Work experience is huge. I can't tell you to what level it will offset a low GPA, but it does. And every school is also different. So some schools might not agree with me on this, but for us it does. And the reason is if you graduated 8 years ago, 6 years ago, 5 years ago, you might be a very different person. Most likely you're a very different person you were when you were an undergrad. And so you need to be able to display that in your resume as well as in your essays, and talk and be ready to talk about those things if you're granted an interview. And experience comes in many forms, so it might not just be work experience, but it's volunteer work that you might have done. It might be any organizations that you're involved in while you were an undergrad or post-undergrad. I know it also might be, I had someone that was in a band and they talked about their leadership role in a band. I know it might seem a little far-fetched and not like true work experience, but they talked about their leadership role in the band and that, they wore many hats. They did the marketing, they performed on a nightly basis, and they did their day job. And that was impressive. And I can understand why their GPA or GMAT might have been affected. Yeah, so there was no mention of GRE in the session. Is GRE considered as a substitute to GMAT for Drucker school? We do take the GRE. It's something new that we just started taking or accepting. The reason why I didn't mention it is that every school doesn't take the GRE. We still prefer the GMAT, and we've typically been taking the GRE in cases where people have been in situations where they can't get to a GMAT testing center. Okay. Do you consider specific countries when you're looking at comparing international students? How do you rationalize such differences? I'm not quite sure I understand that question, but we look at all countries on the same level. So U.S. versus every other country, we look at those countries, those students on an equal level. And how we do that is on the transcript, I go grade by grade. I do look at the overall GPA, but for me, I look grade by grade and how you did in each of your classes, especially the quantitative courses and your business courses. I look at it grade by grade, and if you didn't take any business courses, I specifically look at the quantitative courses to see how you did. How can you find out what the review application process is of a school? Our review process is actually posted on our website, and a lot of schools are, but this is something where you can email the school or give the school a call. We love to hear from people, so feel free to ask us. If a person has a break or gap in their employment can affect their admissions chances. Yes, if you're not able to explain with that break or gap what was going on. Um, Typically, the break or gap, if it's time to prepare for graduate school or um, you were laid off or maybe you were let go, if you can accurately explain what happened and give us better insight on what's going on in your resume, then it's a non-issue. Okay, what kind of questions should be asked from alumni to get better perspective and that will leave a positive impact so even alumni will also recommend me? Oh, that's very smart. um, Obviously you want to ask what their experience was like in the program, but you also want to be able to, as you ask questions, um, explain why you want to go to a particular school. So as you're asking questions about their experience at the Drucker School, you want to be able to accurately explain why you want to go to the Drucker School and why it's important for you to have this conversation with them. I keep it short. I call them informational interviews. So no longer than 15 minutes or maybe over coffee. You don't want to come off as a nuisance, but you also want to say, hey, what was your work-life balance like? What are some of the things that you did to prepare and balance work and preparation before starting graduate school? You want to get a better idea of, you know, pre-graduate school, um, how it was when they're in the program, and then post-graduate school. So do B schools give more weightage to candidates with backgrounds in computer science and good work experience for admission? In other words, are certain domains given more preference over others for selection? Maybe at some schools, but not at our school, and I haven't heard that before. Um, my job as an admissions person is to have a diverse student body that can succeed in our program. And so if I was to play weight to engineers or computer science majors and play favor to them, then that would only hurt the dynamics of the classroom. I want to actually have students that studied the arts and humanities or economics, political science, engineers. I want a breadth of students in the classroom. So no, we don't give any more preference to one other domain versus another. And I haven't heard that from my colleagues at other schools that they do that. How much does undergraduate leadership roles affect your application? It affects your application if you don't have a lot of work experience, if you don't show a lot of progression in your resume or in your career. Leadership roles in undergrad are huge. However, if you didn't have any undergraduate leadership roles, or you weren't actively involved in undergrad, but in your current job, you're very active, or you're moving up in your career, then the undergraduate leadership roles aren't as important. You've obviously grown as an individual as you've gotten older, and as you in work, and your work has acknowledged those things. So we recognize that. So I would say undergraduate leadership roles are important if you're lacking in certain areas such as work experience. How much does promotions matter in work experience? Policies for promotions are different in different organizations across the globe. How are these differences rationalized while considering students? Um, Promotions definitely help, but we recognize that, it's different across the globe. That's why it's important that your letter of recommendations come from a manager, a supervisor, someone that can speak to the work that you've done, some of your successes. Maybe your promotion hinges on you successfully getting your MBA, and we understand that, and so that's why recommendations become important. Um, does it help that you know someone else that has successfully gone through the program at the school you're looking at? No, actually, that doesn't play a factor for us at all. Um, but if that person, I wouldn't use that person as a professional reference, but if they were to shoot me an email or give me a call and say, hey, you know, this person is really great, they're applying, this is why I think they're great, it doesn't hurt, but it won't factor in the ultimate decision. What is the main difference between part-time and full-time MBA programs? Is a part-time MBA program frowned upon? The main difference is a part-time, for us at least, a part-time program is um, an MBA program where people work. So you go part-time, and that's the main difference. Um, Students, because of that difference, students typically are a little bit older, a little more seasoned. Um, their reasons for going to graduate school may be different, or to getting their MBA might be different from someone who's doing the full-time MBA program. But and the admissions process is different, and the weight for us, a lot more of the weight is put on the work experience for the part-time MBA program than it is for the full-time MBA program. Um, and is a part-time MBA program frowned upon? The part-time MBA program is not frowned upon. It's just a very, very different program. Um, the end goals, or the end game, is different. With the full-time MBA program, we're doing a lot of preparation for you to go into the workplace and elevate your career. We're doing a lot of work to help you land that dream internship. And a lot of times with the part-time MBA program, the MBA is to help them elevate them in the current organization that they're in, or help them transition to another department within an organization. Maybe you're in finance and you always wanted to go to marketing. So it's just very, very different. How do admissions offices view career jumpers? Um, Career jumpers are always difficult in terms of, to go, for instance, I used the example finance to marketing. Um, we want to get a better idea of why you want to do such a drastic career change, so that we can better prepare you to make that change. We want to align you with faculty that will be able to assist you, alums, and also with get you in that internship. That internship is golden. Um, so getting that ideal internship, that will help you facilitate the career change. Um, we don't frown upon career jumpers. We embrace them, but the students have to realize that it's going to take a lot of work, and that they really have to get in the trenches so that they can actually uh, switch careers. Does knowledge of more than two languages matter as a part? Um, no. Um, but it talks. It might speak a little to one's ability to land jobs in another country or in different organizations, but it doesn't. For us, it doesn't matter in terms of the admission process. I know some schools it does matter if your focus is going to be international business. So having knowledge of more than two languages will help you. And also I know that some of those schools actually have language programs, so it might not, it gives you a little bit of a leg up, but again, they're going to offer language programs within their university. So it's not that huge of a boost. Can you use clients from your company as recommenders? That's fine. I see that, especially for entrepreneurs, and we embrace those. Um, but we call them, professional recommendations, meaning anybody we don't but a family member. That's what I like to say. So anyone that you have a professional working relationship, they could speak to your work is something that we will accept. How do admission committees view working two jobs? Does it greatly enhance the CV? It depends on what the two jobs are. It all depends about the story. Um, it's for us, it's not so much about the years of work experience or how many jobs you have. It's about the quality of the work experience. What are you gaining from doing those two jobs? Someone asked earlier about career jumpers. Well, if you work in finance as one job, and your second job is dealing, maybe you're a blogger, maybe you're doing something in social media, something that you're passionate about, if that's marketing and you're trying to switch from finance to marketing, we that greatly enhances your CV because it tells us who you are and and it gives us a better picture. But really the focus should be on the quality of work experience, not the quantity. If you guys have any more questions, please keep sending them. I think we have only about 10 minutes left. So ask away. But yeah, this has really been a pleasure. It's always a little different doing these sessions when you can't actually see the audience. But it's not every day you get to have these interactions with admission directors or people that are deeply involved in the admissions process. So get all your questions out, and oh, here's a new one that came in. Do permanent positions get more weight than temporary positions when evaluating work experience, especially if you're still looking for a permanent position? Um, Permanent positions don't get more weight than temporary positions, especially in this economy. Um, we understand what's going on globally and how difficult it is for it to come by jobs, ideal jobs, I should say. And we understand that your reason for getting an MBA is so that you can get that ideal job. So temporary positions are fine. Again, you just have to paint the picture for us on what it is that you want to do and what's going on in your resume, that you're still currently and actively looking for a permanent position. Or if you're not actively looking for a permanent position, that maybe you're doing things on the side that fall within your passion. Um, we had someone who actually was a freelance writer and was involved in social media consulting because they couldn't find a permanent job. So they created their own job. And that took a lot of looking within themselves and what they are passionate about. and they recognized that there were some deficiencies, and so that's why they wanted to go back and get an MBA. But these are all really good questions, and I'm enjoying my time. Okay, for a candidate with a low GPA but a good GMAT score, does a steady professional performance give him or her an edge in terms of selection over others? But with good GPA and good GMAT, but little work experience. Okay, this is a little more of a difficult question. Give me a second here. Um, I think that's a common misstep that people make is my application stronger than other applications that I receive. The point for me, like I said, I want to have the most diverse student body that I can have. Um, and so if all my applications are strong and everyone I think can contribute to the program, then I will raise my acceptance rate will go up. So it's not about, if I have this score versus this score, will I be weighted higher over others? I look at everyone as whether or not you can just succeed in the program and whether or not you will be, what will you bring to the MBA program? What type of alum will you be? Will we be able to help you find an internship, a job? These are things that I think about, and it's not so much, you versus another applicant. And I know that might be a different school of thought at other schools, but for us, it's really about educating people that have um, the drive, that are passionate about something, and that they want to come here and they feel that what we provide will help them get to that next level. Yeah, so what do I mean by graduate level courses? Can you give some examples? I have because of our approach to management at the Drucker School, we have a lot of students who apply that have an arts and humanities background. And so what they'll do for graduate level courses is they'll enroll in an extension program at a local college, and they'll take statistics or economics. Um, they'll take those are usually the ones that I see as are economics, micro and macro, and a statistics course. But there are others out there, but usually they're quant courses. Um, can you tell me something about how much pre-MBA work experience determines the kind of post-MBA job offers? The pre-MBA work experience, obviously our students that have work experience before starting have an easier time finding work. Typically, it's a little more, difficult if they're doing, career jumping, or if they have a lot of work experience in an area that they don't want to go into. Um, for those, though, that don't have the work experience, a solid internship could just be just as important, because a lot of times those organizations will hire you on, but it enhances your overall resume. So don't get discouraged by the work experience. I would say the internship could be just as strong. Um, what weight does the admissions committee give to extracurriculars and admissions process? Um, I wouldn't say it's actually something that we measure, but it's definitely something that we look at, that we bring up in the interview process. Um, if you were an athlete, we had someone that applied who didn't have work experience, but they were a gold medalist in the Olympics. And I told them that the preparation to get to the Olympics, the time that they put in, is work experience. That dedication means a lot in the process. And so, there is no actual measurement for that, but to be able to accurately tell that story, um, it is important. All right. Well, it was a pleasure speaking to you guys. If you have any other questions, I recommend that you shoot me an email at information@cgu.edu or give me a call at 909-607-7810. And like I said, feel free to introduce yourself. Let me know a little bit more about you, and reference this webinar. What are my chances, tips for getting accepted with a low GPA or GMAT score, or let me know that you came through Beat the GMAT. Thank you, guys.